Hey, hey, this is the DIY Marketing School podcast. I am your host and your marketing coach, Melanie Diane Howe. And today we're going to talk about the 4 dimensions of your personal brand. What is going on, my friends? Oh, today we're going to talk about personal branding. And before you go any further in this episode, I want you to understand, or at least I guess I need to say something really important. Everyone has a personal brand, regardless of the type of business you own or what your job is. We all have a personal brand. And even if you aren't a business owner or an influencer, thought leader, a whatever your name is.com kind of person, you still have a personal brand. So even if you work for a company or inside of a company, you still have a personal brand. I say this because a few months ago, I was preparing for a personal branding workshop that I was teaching to some local interns. And I kind of went on my Facebook page and I was like, hey, what does it mean to you when I say personal brand? And I got this array of responses. And it was really interesting to see what people's interpretation of what a personal brand is. Some people, definitely focused on their style, how they dress and stuff like that. A lot of people also focused on, they said, well, I don't really have a personal brand. And they were kind of talking about their business. And it was just really interesting, the different responses I got. So I just always want to make sure that before I start talking about understanding your personal brand and kind of how to tangibly think about it, it's important for me to make sure that we're all level set here, that you have a personal brand, regardless of the business, whether you own a business or not, or your role in a business, or the kind of business that you either own or work for. So, obviously, I'm really passionate about the whole people buy from people aspect of things. This is definitely an area that I think that we all need to make sure that we embrace. It's a human to human marketing world now. It used to always be the B2B, B2C. That's how we always classified it. But I am just really passionate that we all have to understand that it's a human to human world. People buy from people. We don't even really buy from logos. And I have an episode all about that. And I will make sure I link to that in the show notes. And it's essentially titled, why people need to be in your content strategy. And so be sure to check that out if this concept of human to human marketing or people buy from people is kind of new to you. Or if you just want a little refresher, right? But the point of this is that we have to, in order for us to truly make really enriched connections, online and offline, we have to be authentic. And I know that, authenticity, we hear about authenticity all the time. And I think that people are craving authenticity even more with, social media and people being out there so much. I think that we are more sensitive to inauthenticity. And we're cautious and we're guarded, or we, roll our eyes or we get annoyed when we see somebody being a certain way. And, we also know that a lot of people, what we see on social media is not the reality, right? Social media is kind of like the, happy-go-lucky version of your life that people display, but there's a lot of other stuff behind the scenes that people don't put out there on social media, and that's fine. So I think that that's part of the reason why authenticity has become, more of a discussed topic, I guess is what I'll say. But I have been talking about personal branding for years now. I've done multiple seminars and presentations around personal branding. And it's interesting because I really don't even love the term personal branding. I think it throws people off. And so I guess until I come up with a better way to describe it, hang in here with me. But we're going to talk about how I believe we all have a personal brand and why it's important for us to understand it in order to be authentic. So first of all, we have to be authentic because when we're not authentic, we actually attract the wrong types of people to our lives and to our businesses. And what I mean by this is, if you go out there and you put yourself out there and you portray yourself in one way because it's what you think people want, or, are trying to just have a particular image, if it's not the reality of who you are and what's going on and all that, then there's going to be people that are going to, they're going to be like drawn to that. And then you're going to build this relationship with them. And then the next thing you know, you're going to be like, I'm not even being myself. Or that person, then going to show your true self. And they're going to be like, well, this isn't who I thought you were. Let me give you an example. So when I started my marketing business in 2014, I became self-employed, independent, and I worked from home, and very quickly realized that was not my favorite thing in the world, meaning I loved the freedom, of course, but I hated being away from people. I'm very much an extrovert. I get energy from being around people. I need to be around stuff and just things that are going on. And what I started doing was I started going to our local coffee shop. It's called The Caffeinery. It's an amazing local, I love it. I love The Caffeinery. It's in downtown Muncie. And I would walk in there and I would sit and I'd work for a couple hours while I'd drink some coffee and stuff. And it's a very busy coffee shop. It was also fairly new at the time. And pretty much if you were having any kind of networking or meetings or anything and you wanted to do it off-site, if you will, you were pretty much saying, hey, let's meet at the Caffeinery. And it still is very much that place in our local community. But it's kind of the place where you go in there, you're probably going to run into someone you know. And so what I found myself doing was, I'd get up and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go to the coffee shop. And I'd make sure I was like, okay, well, I might run into a potential client, or I want to make sure I'm going to see these people that are just, the people of our community. And I need to make sure I look the right part. Like, I don't want to just go in there after I work out and like wear my workout clothes. And I might meet a new client. So I would make sure that I was dressed appropriately, kind of like, my business attire. And my business attire was not like a suit and tie or anything, but I was, trying to make sure I looked put together. And I did this, for a few weeks. And then the more I got into my business and the more I really just started embracing, hey, I own my own business. I can create whatever kind of business I want. And I can choose the clients that I work with. And I want people to choose me for the right reasons. And so I will tell you, if someone looks at me and thinks that I'm dressed the right way to be a marketing professional, then that's probably not the kind of person that I actually truly want to work with, right? Like I'm a big, I'm an athletic girl. I'm an outdoorsy girl. I love being comfortable. I love to dress up, but I also love my V-neck t-shirts and, my little comfy shoes. So I really started embracing this concept of, what are you doing? Because here's what's going to happen. If I sit there and I'm dressed up at the coffee shop and I start chatting up with somebody and they're like, hey, let's talk. I need some marketing help. Let's have a meeting. Well, then guess what needs to happen? Every time I meet with that client, I'm going to have to make sure that I feel like I'm dressed the right way. It's kind of like I have created my business uniform. And so I kind of got to a point where I was like, screw that. I'm done with that, because my clients, the people who I want to work with need to be okay with, like, I might drink a beer on my Facebook Live video, for example. Some people might say, well, that's really unprofessional, which is completely fine. Don't get me wrong. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own thoughts and opinions. But if someone's going to like judge me and feel negative about that, then they're probably not the kind of client I really would be a good fit for. Because sometimes I might want to go and have, lunch and a beer in the afternoon while I work on some marketing content. And that's okay too. So for me, it is. So the same thing goes with my clothes. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. If somebody sees me in my workout clothes after I just went for a run in the morning and I'm doing a little work in the coffee shop, and they're going to look at that and think that that's unprofessional, or that that's not, like, well, what is she doing? Oh my God, I can't believe she's working in that outfit. Well, then again, they're not the right person for me. And so this is a simple example, but it matters, because think about dating. It's the same thing. When you go out on a date and you portray yourself in one way, but it's not the reality of who you are every day, well, then that's what they're going to expect. And if you like them and then you continue to go on additional dates with them, you have to maintain that image. You have to maintain whatever it is that you've created. And if you're not being authentic, then what you're doing is you're maintaining inauthenticity. And that is why this topic is important, both in business and in our personal lives. So the whole point of this story is that we have to be our true selves, because if we're not, then we may potentially be attracting the wrong clients or the wrong people in our life. So you just got to be you, always be you, and you will attract the correct people, and you'll repel people that aren't the right people for you. So, when I give this presentation, I always talk about my hair. So I've got this kind of, different haircut. It's kind of like a boyish looking haircut. It's short and it's spiky and it is what it is. And in a weird way, it's kind of become part of my brand. And I'll talk about this in a second. I'm going to share with you the 4 dimensions of your personal brand. And my hair, there are some people that are put off by my hairstyle. They very much are. In fact, there are people that talk about my hairstyle. I mean, I think those people probably need to find something else to do with their lives, but that's okay, right? That's what they're going to do. And then there's other people that are like, your hair is so awesome. Oh yeah, it's so, it's so badass. I love it. Those are probably people that are going to be more drawn to my style and my style of work, who are probably a better fit to be, a student in one of my courses or in one of my programs, or even a coaching client, because they are attracted to something that is very much me. And it is part of who I am. It's one of the dimensions. And I'm going to go through those dimensions in a moment. And so by doing that, and by keeping and maintaining that whatever look I want, then it's a polarizing effect that's created. And that's essentially what living out your brand is going to do, is again, it's going to do that attracting and repelling. And what we have to recognize is that we are being judged no matter what. So you might as well just be judged for who you really are. And the people that are going to judge you in a negative way, they aren't your people. And the people that are going to admire you for what it is you are, then those are your people. And when we're not ourselves, we don't allow that kind of self-correcting, polarizing effect to happen. And so that's really a little bit of the backstory about why I believe this is so important. And it is important. And I will be honest with you, I've been thinking about recording this episode for a while, but I've kind of been holding it off. But today I just decided, you know what? I want to start talking about this more and more. It's so important. It is definitely probably, if you were to ask me what my most passionate topic is, it is absolutely this. It very much is. And when I'm on stage talking about it, I think anyone who has seen me talk about this, they know it. This is a big deal for me. So I won't go into any more backstory or stories about, discovering my own personal brands or whatnot. What I want today is I want to spend, the next amount of time on this episode, and I want you to start thinking about your personal brand when, and that is in on various aspects of your life. And I want you to break it down into these 4 dimensions. Okay. So there are 4 dimensions to your brand. And the first dimension is your roles. Okay. So your roles with others, your roles. And so think of it this way. Are you a leader? Are you kind of like the doer? Are you the inspirational person? Are you the motivator? Are you the coach? What is your role? And obviously we have different roles in our life. I mean, you have a role at home, and then you probably have, maybe your role is a little different at work. That's okay. Okay. So I want you to think about what your role is. My role is definitely like an encourager. I'm an encourager. I'm an energetic entertainer. So I'm meant to tell stories, right? So my role many times is to be that kind of encouraging, motivational voice for people. And that is my role there. Now, my role at home as a mom is that, among a bunch of other things too. So sometimes we got to decide, okay, what aspect, what area of my business or what area of my life am I at right now? And what is my role? And just kind of understanding this about yourself is really helpful, because the more you understand it, and like when you kind of write it down into words, you're more likely to lean into it. And I will tell you, if you're not really sure about what your role is, and a lot of people do struggle with this, they're like, I'm not really sure what my role is. Then I would encourage you to go online and check out some of the free personality assessments. There's there's a lot of really, really good ones. There's Strength Finder. There's the Enneagram. Am I saying that? I hope I'm saying that correctly. And then there's another one it's like 16personalities.com. I actually really, really like that one because when it breaks everything down, it actually does break it down kind of like into roles. And so just go start there. If you're feeling a little lost in this, then go find any of these free personality assessments and just take them and just start to read about yourself. And knowing that when you answer the questions in those assessments as honestly as possible, then you obviously are going to get a much more accurate result. So the other dimension that we have is our style. And I think that when people think about branding or even personal branding, they naturally think about style. So when I was talking about my hair, for example, and even my outfit, that's part of my style. Your style also includes your tone of voice. Do you use a lot of humor? Do you use a lot of sarcasm? Are you kind of one of those sarcastic people all the time? Do you have a witty humor about you? Or do you have dark humor? That's part of your style. So not only is it how you dress and how you kind of portray yourself, but it's all those other things too. Your style can include your clothes, how much, makeup you wear, how much, how fashionable you are in regards to, do you have lots of different outfits, or do you kind of keep it pretty simple? Things like that. So the style is a pretty easy one, but I don't want you to forget that it also includes your tone of voice and the words you use, whether you cuss or not, things like that. That's part of your style. And then your style is also a lot of times kind of like, I always call it kind of like your energy factor. Are you high energy? Are you kind of quiet? Are you the one who's talking all the time? Or are you more of the wallflower? That's also part of your style too. So kind of just like your personality and how it kind of comes out is part of that as well. So the next dimension, so when you're thinking about your style, I want you to be thinking about what exactly is your style? What is your method? Like, how do you portray yourself? And then the next dimension that I always say is included in our personal brand are your values. And this one is really, really important. Your values are what's important to you. And so this is where, I always there's a lot of sensitive topics out there. And I always just say, for the most part, by default, maybe avoid talking about sensitive topics. But depending on how deep your values go in an area, that may need to be something you talk about. So for example, Christianity is definitely one of those, any kind of religion is always a sensitive topic. But if you are, if you're a pastor, for example, most likely you're going to talk about, your Christianity. And that's okay, because that obviously, if you're a pastor, then you have some super deep, strong Christian values, right? So that is kind of an example that's always just a super easy one. But there's other things, one of my values is empowering. I really am all about empowering women, because I absolutely think that women need to step up, step in, and really get more confident and more courageous. And I would like to see more women, being put into leadership roles and being paid correctly and all those things. And you know why that's important to me? Because of my background. So a lot of times our values are stemmed from our background. And so, what's important to us now is a lot of times a result of, things that happened in our past, whether it be our childhood. So someone who has strong Christian values, it's possible that they were raised that way, and that's why they have strong Christian values. I have strong values around empowering women because, of my background in my childhood of, feeling like, one of the things I always tell this story used to just piss me off is how a teacher, it's like the last week of school and you're cleaning up your classroom, and the teacher would always be like, I need 2 strong boys to carry all these books. And he used to just piss me off. I was like, I can freaking carry the books. And I was, a tomboy. I was very athletic, pretty much for the most part, many times would kick the boys' butts in gym class at various sports. And yet the teacher's like, I need 2 strong boys to carry these books. And it just used to make me so mad. So that's just a little example of where this comes from for me. But anyway, so think about what's important to you, like deeply rooted what's important to you, right? And so this is also something that you'll find this is a lot of times our values are a big piece of that attracting and repelling aspect. So, I think that, for example, if somebody does not feel the way that I feel about female empowerment, they're probably not going to come hang out with me. Like, for example, if someone, if there's a dude out there who believes that, men are better than women and that men belong in, powerful roles and women don't, then that guy and I probably aren't going to enjoy a cup of coffee together. We're sure as hell not going to enjoy a beer together. So, things like that. So you always want to remember, like, your values is actually one of the most polarizing aspects about you. So think about those things and write those things down as well. And then the last dimension for your personal brand, it's your standards. So this is how you do things, right? And so many times when we, live our life or we help people in business or anything else, it's not always what we do for people that they remember, it's how we do it. And so your standards are very important. A really, an example would be, if a woman works her way up through the ranks in a corporate environment, how did she get there? Did she put other people down to get there? Did she make others look bad so that she would look better? Did she cheat the system? Or did she, honorably work her butt off and earn every step of the way and was a good leader and brought people along with her, right? So that's kind of an example, again, a really drastic example of standards. But your standards is essentially just wrapping everything together into the package and how you do stuff. Maybe you're a leader. Your role is that you're a leader. Well, how are you a leader? Are you a servant leader? What kind of leader are you? So think about that too. Like, how are you actually doing things, making a difference, and how are you making an impact? What is your process, if you will? So think about that and all those things, put them all together. And again, the whole point of this is just to get you to start tangibly thinking about yourself and your personal brand. When we go through an exercise and we start to just write some various notes down about these 4 dimensions, again, they are your roles with others, your style, how you portray yourself to others, your values, what's important to you, and your standards, basically how we do everything. All of those 4 dimensions, if you just get a piece of paper out and you just write those 4 things down and you just start to write all the things down, just anything that comes to your mind, then what I want you to do is I want you to really think about, how are you showing up? How are you showing up, physically in person with people, and how are you showing up online? Are these things being authentically portrayed, right? Are you, living all this out authentically? And there's one thing else I'll say that's really important is that you own your own boundaries. So, for example, I'm a very transparent person. I'm out there. I don't really have anything to hide. I mean, I just portray stuff. Many of you listeners know, and some of you don't, but I went through breast cancer and had a whole journey around breast cancer and had multiple surgeries, ended up, getting a double mastectomy and reconstruction. I was very public about this in my social media. Not everyone is going to do that, and that's okay. Okay. I just don't have that boundary around things like that. Many other people do. And I know this for a fact because I had many people reach out to me through private messages, and they told me that they were going through the same thing, or that their mother was going through it but their mother didn't want anyone to know. So they were asking me for advice on how to support their mother, for example. So I know for a fact there's a lot of people that are quietly and privately going through things. And that's okay. Those are their personal boundaries. So the other thing I would say that you should add is just make sure that you know that you absolutely own your own boundaries. So just because you see somebody else doing something on social media, for example, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to as well. Okay. And just because you see other people not doing anything on social media doesn't mean that you can't do those things. Okay. So go through the process, write down these 4 dimensions, jot some notes down, and then give yourself a little bit of a check. Are you living this out? Are you living yourself out authentically? And again, a lot of this is just because I want you to have the most enriched connections both in business and your profession, but also in your personal life. And when we can understand who we are and the more we can embrace who we truly are inside, then the more we can be authentic. And I'll say this, you don't create your personal brand. Your personal brand is actually already inside of you. You just have to decide, are you going to let it out authentically or inauthentically? And that's what this is all about. It's not because so that you can go create a personal brand. That is already inside of you. You just have to make the choice of how you're going to live it out and whether you're going to live it out authentically or inauthentically. So there it is. And I gotta just be, again, I'm always really transparent. I'm going to let you guys know that, I have, again, this kind of process, if you will, is not brand new. This is something that I've been teaching and working with people for years on. And I said earlier that it is the topic I'm the most passionate about. And so here we are, 30 episodes into my podcast, and the first time I'm really talking about it. And here's the thing, I got to tell you, I have put it off because I feel like I wanted to just make it perfect. I wanted to package it up and make it amazing and perfect. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't have any notes. There's no notes for this episode. And maybe you could tell, I don't know, but I just decided, you know what? I don't want to hold this information back anymore. I'm going to just get it out there. And it's probably not the last time I'm going to talk about it. So I will come on this podcast again and we will talk about these dimensions. And there's so much more to it, just how we get clear on our personal brands, because I know a lot of you are not clear. You're really not sure. You're like, I don't really feel that strongly about my personal brand. Well, that's okay. We're going to work on that. But I decided, I just want to get this out there. I want to put it out into the world. I want you to be thinking about your brand in those 4 dimensions and really just start to just have it in your mind. Because again, I think what happens is if we don't focus on who we are and we don't tangibly focus on it, then what happens is we kind of go on cruise control. And sometimes we accidentally find ourselves, we have fallen off the authenticity train, and it's really difficult to get back onto it. Because again, like I told you, when we're inauthentic, we start living a life that's not really real, and we got to keep it up. It's kind of like living a lie. They always say, like you tell one lie, it means you got to tell 20 more just to keep that lie going. And I know that's kind of a harsh way to describe it, but this is really important. And so at a minimum, just start thinking about it. Just kind of put this into your notebook and just revisit it, every once in a while, and just make sure you continue to do this self-work of understanding your personal brand. Because again, in business, it's going to create better connections with clients, customers. It's going to make you actually enjoy doing more social media for your business. And as you know, I believe very strongly that one of the best ways we can connect with people organically is with our social media content. And if you don't like social media, it's probably for a few reasons. One, you don't feel like your content is good enough and you kind of have that perfectionism in you. A lot of the other reasons revolve around, what are people going to think about this? And that kind of goes back to what I just said. And that caring about what other people think a lot of times comes down to their fear of being judged. But the more you can truly embrace your authenticity, the less you care about that. Because again, if someone's going to judge you because there's a typo on something, they're going to judge you. But if you're like me and there's typos sometimes, then it is what it is. But does that really affect how you can help them or change their life with your products and services? But so I guess what I'm saying is, before I start going down a rabbit hole again, is that the more we actually embrace our authentic true selves and we put it out there, it actually is easier to create content. It's actually easier to do things and to do it when we actually can embrace the authenticity factor and understanding the value of it, meaning the attracting and the repelling. When you actually start to experience that and you just start to have these more enriched connections, then the more you actually enjoy putting yourself out there. I promise you. So yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. A little personal branding kind of teaching on the 4 dimensions. And I hope that it was helpful. Again, write it down, revisit it, take those personality assessments, and just start doing this work to really understand what that personal brand is. And I will personally invite you as well to join us over in my Facebook community, because it is a bunch of people that are personal brands. We are all personal brands, but they are also trying to figure out how to use social media, how to put themselves out there, and to better connect with their audience. And I'll have a link to that Facebook group, of course, in the show notes, but just do a search in Facebook, DIY Marketing with Melanie. I'd love to see you in there, and I'd love to know how we can help you unravel your personal brand and put yourself out there so that you can continue to share your gifts with the world. That's what I got for you guys today. I hope you have an awesome, awesome, awesome day. And go do something amazing. Be awesome in your own way, in your authentic you way.